So thank you very much for having us to the stage today and including our voices in this important event. You heard from Steve and from Shirley about the importance of principals, and it really is a very big job. But you're going to hear from a lot from adults today, so we thought it would be important that you start by hearing from the kids.
I think a principal should be caring, be willing to be there for students when they need somebody. They should be able to go to all activities. They should be able to not just always be hard on the kids when they need punishment, but just be there in general. And because some kids that might be going through hard times might be bad and might just need somebody to talk to.
Es decir, que los respeten con todo lo que tienen y también que les tomen en cuenta y que no los den pues la mala cara.
A principal should, yes, be stern when things need to be handled. But they should also be able to go into classrooms and do activities with the students and not just sit in their office and wait for a call that they need to go to because somebody's done something wrong.
They run this school, so I'm pretty sure they're what you need in order to have a school. They are the main support for the school. It's like a pole and a temple. The temple needs the pole in order for it to not fall down. It's kind of like that with the school and the principal.
That with the school and the principal. I'm not sure if he said tent pole or temple, but either way, it's kind of appropriate, right? And so kind of out of the mouth of babes, we hear a lot about their expectations for principals. And we decided we needed to really talk to our graduates too about, what are the things that you are facing on the job that aren't explained in the standards, that you could not have anticipated going into the work. And so from our graduates, we received these responses. In my rural school, where the sheriff is at least 10 minutes away, locking down my campus and getting a hysterical parent to calm down and put down their loaded 9mm weapon. Telling first graders that their classmate had died. After a Friday night football game, depositing the athletic money in the bank in the dark in the highest crime neighborhood in town. Cleaning up a kindergartner who had yet another potty accident. My school is an emergency shelter for students who had lost everything in a flood and finding resources for them, just like I needed. This person had also lost their home in the flood, and their school was the shelter, staying in their own school. Delivering a baby in the women's restroom on the first day on the job. True story. We did not cover that in our training, I will say. We hadn't gone there, but after that, we thought maybe we should have a little bit more on biohazards or something. And probably the most poignant one is attending so many funerals. So it's our job to prepare these leaders. And sometimes this is what we feel like at NC State, that we are on a mission impossible, that there's so many things, so many challenges that our leaders face, that how can we possibly ever get them ready for this job? But I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I've learned from my over 2 decades of experience in preparing leaders. Standards are very important, but you saw those little micro print of how many different behaviors, and our fellows saying, even with the standards, there's all sorts of things that you don't anticipate. But the problem with standards, even though they are very important, is they can teach folks, if we're not vigilant, they teach folks to be inspectors of what has been handed down to them as a solution to a problem in their building, a solution that's been handed to them from outsiders that might not know their exact context. And so we at NC State believe that we have to frame leadership preparation as such as creating creative thinkers who are divergent thinkers and able to be problem solvers of their own problems. And so at NC State, we have the motto of think and do the extraordinary. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is prepare extraordinary leaders. We want to take it from compliance to an inspection to breakthrough practices. Another thing that I've learned in my work with preparing leaders is that this is very much a people-focused job. It's people-focused work. And sometimes those biggest challenges can be our biggest opportunities for breakthrough and for impact. Shirley mentioned the ethic of care and the community of care that principals are expected to establish. But how does that look in practice is really where the rubber hits the road. 3 years ago this month, I saw an example of excellence leadership exemplified, and it actually has changed the way that we prepare our leaders to make them think about how do you go beyond what is expected and really make an impact. So my sons were in 5th and 3rd grade at the time. And, as you often do as a mom, you get to know the other moms at the school. And this particular mother had children who were also in my son's grades. And our oldest children were classmates and playmates and had become quite close friends. I can really vividly still remember where I was and what happened when I received the news that she had tragically died of a brain aneurysm. The Thursday was to be the funeral at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember waiting for the services to begin, really overcome with emotion. I was selfishly thinking about, what about me? What if it was my kids whose mother had died? What would happen to them? And I looked over at my 8-year-old and 10-year-old boys who were kind of fidgeting uncomfortably in their brand new dark suits, and they're fidgeting, waiting for the celebration to begin. And I reached over to kind of hold my little boy's hand and tried to choke back my own tears. And I was looking down so they wouldn't see me cry. And my eldest son squeezed my hand. He said, "Mom, look, it's my principal." I kind of expected the principal to be there, so I didn't really even look up. A minute later, he squeezes my hand again, this time a little bit tighter, and he says, "Mom, it's my assistant principal." This time I did look up. I was a little impressed that you actually got 2 administrators out of the building. And I looked up just in time to see the assistant principal taking a seat in the 3rd row, just behind the extended family. And as I tried to zone my focus in on who was sitting in that 3rd row, because some of them looked familiar from behind, that hairdo from behind look where you're like, I think I know that person. I was looking at them and seeing who was on that 3rd row, and it was really at that moment that the difference between good leadership and extraordinary leadership came into clear view for me. You see, it just wasn't the principal and the assistant principal sitting in that row. It was every single 3rd grade teacher, every single 5th grade teacher, the counselor, the school secretary, even the custodian were all there. Every adult who had contact with those children in that building was there. They showed up when it mattered most. And it struck me, my leadership in me was thinking, logistics. Oh my gosh, how'd they pull this off? How would you get all those details in place to have 9 teachers out of the building, plus support staff, plus your other administrator? And my mind is going with this, and I think I literally even said out loud, wow. Wow. And I look back over at my young sons, and I reached for their hand again, and I thought about the impact that a leader can have. And my thoughts really did turn back to my boys, and I saw one of them with their little index finger counting out the number of people in the row that he could recognize. And Drew said to me, "Mom, they're all here." The hymn for the entrance for the beginning of the Mass began to play, and I kind of nodded quiet, shh, shh, yeah, I know they're here. And my youngest son, who is a little bit of a character, in his not so inside voice, loudly asserted, "They must really like funerals." I said, shh, no. Well, the point is this. As tears were streaming down my face, I laughed because I realized that, to him, they were there maybe because they really like funerals, but probably not. We had that talk later. But it was their commitment. It's not fun to be there. It's not necessarily where they wanted to be that day, but it was their commitment as teachers and leaders that they showed up that day. It wasn't easy, it wasn't enjoyable, but they did the hard work that it required to be there when it mattered most. And this is when I really did lose it and start crying pretty hard, was when I looked back up at that 3rd row and again thought selfishly, what if it was me? And I realized my kids would be okay. They have this unbelievable group of committed educators who are willing to wrap them in love and support. And you see, that's what great leaders do, is they think beyond the minimal expectations. You know, a good leader would send a card. A good leader might send flowers. They would show up at the visitation or the funeral. But a truly great leader thinks about the impact of living by your convictions and of your values. Thinks about the impact in the life of those kids. Thinks about making moments that anchor values in people. And I guarantee you, that leader that day created followers, not just of their teachers, but of those students. And not just of the students who lost their mother, who would then follow those teachers who were so committed because they knew that those teachers loved them, but of every kid in that sanctuary who saw the love that their teachers had for the kids in their care. And so that's what great leaders do. They create opportunities to create followers, who then create followers of their own, and then move the entire school forward. Principals like her are extraordinary, but we need more principals like her who are extraordinary. And that's why, in addition to the 2 U.S. Department of Education grants that we have and the 2 grants that are funded generously by the state of North Carolina to prepare leaders here in North Carolina, we've partnered with the Wallace Foundation to try to build on their groundbreaking research and build on the work that they have done in principal preparation so that we can together make sure that every school and every kid in our care have extraordinary leaders.